Her words took me by surprise, and I found myself nodding in agreement. Even if I hurriedly said I wasn't looking, it was already too late. Moreover, she went on to say something absolutely astonishing. At first, I was like, what is she talking about? But her words concealed a gentle sentiment. Those words became the turning point, and both our lives changed dramatically after that. My name is Jake, 23 years old. After college, I failed to get a proper job and ended up working part-time at a resort hotel. Well, I guess I'm what you'd call a part-time worker. The reason I chose the resort hotel goes back to an event during college. When I was in my junior year, my beloved grandmother, who always doted on me, passed away. Though I lived in New York and my grandmother near a resort area in upstate New York, we didn't see each other often, but we stayed in touch regularly. I loved her deeply, knowing how much she cherished me. After her passing, her home remained untouched for a while. Around the time I was graduating college, discussions arose about whether to sell or rent out her home. That's when I took it over. This was mainly because, after failing in my job hunting, I felt a bit alienated by my parents and friends, as if I were damaged goods. I didn't really want to stay in New York anymore. I figured, if I'm going to work as a part-time worker, it didn't matter if I stayed in the city or near the resort where my grandmother lived. So, I moved to my grandmother's house, almost as if running away from the city. Not far from my grandmother's, within biking distance, there was this big resort hotel, so I decided to work there. One early morning during my shift at the resort, I spotted a woman walking by the poolside before it was open to guests. "Excuse me, the pool isn't open yet." When I spoke up, the woman smiled warmly and asked, "Are you one of the part-timers?" Turning to face me, she was a strikingly beautiful woman with distinct mole under her eyes. I was taken aback by her long, pale legs extending from her skirt, trying my best not to show my surprise. "Yes, I just started this spring." Hearing this, she smiled and said, "Oh, I see," and extended her right hand towards me. "My name is Alyssa Smith. I'm the only daughter of the owner here. Technically, I'm an employee, so being here is allowed, okay?" I have heard her name before, and the story of the beautiful 25-year-old soul heiress was pretty well known. Yet, she worked at the hotel. My main job was cleaning the pool and recreational facilities, so we hadn't crossed paths before. "Oh, I'm so sorry, my bad." "It's fine. I haven't been to the poolside in a while either." From then on, Alyssa and I started chatting more often. It seemed Alyssa went to local college and only visited New York on trips. I casually mentioned that I moved from New York, which seemed to pique her interest. Alyssa was very friendly and easygoing. About a month after we met, when I was still addressing her as Ms. Smith, she corrected me saying, "You know the hotel CEO is also named Smith, right? Isn't it a bit confusing? Just call me Alyssa. We're around the same age and friends now, so there's no need for formalities, okay?" It felt a bit bold to drop the formalities, but now, 3 months since we met, I call her Alyssa. Ever since Alyssa and I got acquainted, she began showing up more frequently at the poolside. Always with a bright smile, seeing her would energize me to get for my workday. However, on a day in early July, Alyssa came by the pool, but her usual cheerful expression was nowhere to be seen. I was just about to take a break, so I guided Alyssa to the break area and offered her some cold drink. Even as she sat on the sofa, her face remained downcast, wondering what had upset her. She finally broke the silence. "Can you help me convince my family?" "Huh? Convince? About what?" I was baffled, and seeing my confusion, Alyssa quickly added, "Oh, I'm sorry, I should have been clearer. I'm facing a dilemma and could really use some advice. It's for the sake of my family." As she shared her story, it turned out that Alyssa's grandmother had fallen ill. She had been battling the illness for a long time, and recently, The doctors had hinted that she might not have much longer. Her grandmother's dying wish was to meet Alyssa's future husband. But Alyssa isn't currently dating anyone. Thus, her parents had arranged a matchmaking date for her. However, according to Alyssa, she absolutely can't stand the guy they've set her up with. The thing is, that guy used to bully me when we were kids. I don't even want to see him again. Well, I've heard that those who've been bullied never forget, so it's not surprising. Why not tell your parents the truth about it? I tried, but they just brushed it off, saying it was just childhood stuff. I later suggested that she could go on the date and then gently decline, but Alyssa immediately dismissed that idea, not even wanting to see the guy's face. But Alyssa's parents had said, if Alyssa has a boyfriend, of course, we won't set up the matchmaking date. But you don't, do you? So why not just give it a shot? We want to see Grandma happy, and we're worried about your future. What do you think I should do? I understand my parents' concern for their unmarried daughter, and of course, I want to make Grandma happy. That's why I'm so lost about what to do. I pondered for a while. Convincing her parents seemed the right move, but if they aren't willing to listen, a bold move might be necessary. What about asking someone to pretend to be your boyfriend? Your parents did say if you had a boyfriend, they wouldn't arrange the date. At first, Alyssa stared blankly, but a few seconds later, her eyes were sparkling. That's it. And suddenly, she started taking off her clothes. Whoa, hold on, Alyssa. What are you doing? Seeing my panicked reaction, Alyssa burst into laughter. Silly, I'm wearing a swimsuit underneath. I'm so happy I feel like taking a slide. Amped up, Alyssa headed straight for the pool and swiftly went down the water slide. Her expressive enthusiasm was overwhelming, but even more distracting was the sight of her stunning bikini-clad figure. Then, with a big splash, Alyssa came down from the water slide into the pool below. But then, a little mishap occurred. Her bikini had shifted slightly out of place. It wasn't fully exposed, but instinctively, I covered my eyes with my hands. Seeing this, Alyssa casually remarked, "Oops," and quickly adjusted her bikini. As she approached the poolside, a thought seemed to strike her, and she looked over at me with a bright expression. With a sly smile, she asked, "Did you get a peek?" Recalling the earlier sight, I inadvertently replied, "Yes," but I quickly came to my senses. After all, I didn't actually see everything. No, I didn't see anything. I swear, I didn't see a thing. Amused by my flustered state, Alyssa pointed at me and firmly said, "Nope, you saw it. So now, you're going to play the role of my boyfriend." Of course, I tried coming up with several excuses to decline the boyfriend role, but Alyssa's decision was final. And then, 5 days later, I found myself introducing myself to Alyssa's parents as her boyfriend. Turns out, Alyssa's dad is the CEO of the company where I work part-time. Being just a part-timer, I had never met the CEO before. I was nervous, wondering what kind of person he'd be, but contrary to my imagination, Alyssa's dad was about 100 times more easygoing and cheerful. Alyssa's mom was a fantastic cook and had a gentle demeanor. Both were surprised that Alyssa was dating a part-timer like me, but these kind-hearted folks accepted me warmly without realizing I was a fake boyfriend. It seems they called off the matchmaking date. I had no idea she was dating a guy from our company. She's quite a handful. Well, please take care of her," her father said, shaking my hand with a firm grip. Her mother served her home-cooked meals, and although I was full, she kept saying, eat up, encouraging me to have more. Anyway, they were truly wonderful people. And I also met Alyssa's grandmother, who I heard was sick. Lately, she seemed to be feeling better, showing a more lively smile than expected, which was a relief for Alyssa. Alyssa's grandmother gently took my hand and caressed it. "Are you Alyssa's fiancé?" Well, not exactly a fiancé. Given that I was just pretending to be her boyfriend, I was quite puzzled, but Alyssa came to my rescue. "Grandma, he's not a fiancé. He's my boyfriend. Alyssa's grandmother chuckled and nodded. Right. I forgot. It's great to meet you. Thank you for coming. And your name is? It's Jake. Upon hearing my name, her grandmother looked surprised and said, "Oh, are you from around here? I used to live in New York, but now I live in my grandmother's house, which is near a resort hotel." She listened with interest to my story. Could it be the house with the large cherry tree in the garden? I was taken aback by her words. It was true that there was a cherry tree in the garden. Considering it's a small town, maybe she knew my grandmother. I wanted to ask her about it, but before I could, Alyssa and her parents called me over. I didn't think it was a big deal, so I didn't pursue the topic further. After that, I had a pleasant time chatting with Alyssa's family. And just as I was about to leave, Alyssa's grandmother whispered something in my ear. You're not a real boyfriend, are you?" What? I was completely taken aback, realizing that our fake boyfriend plan had been exposed. Haha, I can tell. Is it the wisdom of age or something? The way you and Alyssa interact, it seems a bit off. Did Alyssa ask you to do this for me and her parents? Well, yes. I foolishly nodded in agreement, but the grandmother was still smiling warmly at me. "I'm sorry for putting you in such a situation, but Alyssa is a really sweet girl. Please continue to be her friend, and I'm glad I got to meet you too." "Thank you, I'm sorry." It seemed that the grandmother had figured out that Alyssa had set up the fake boyfriend plan out of kindness. She didn't blame either of us. Afterwards, the grandmother told me to keep it a secret from Alyssa that she had figured it out, so I did. Though we managed to avoid the matchmaking meeting successfully, a few days later, during my day off, I received an unexpected call from Alyssa. My grandmother's condition has worsened, and she's been rushed to the hospital. I got a call from home. What should I do? I can't bear the thought if something happens to her. I had never heard Alyssa sound so panicked and on the verge of tears. "Calm down. Where are you now? I'll get a cab and come pick you up. Then we'll go to the hospital together." I couldn't let her go to the hospital alone in such a state, so I hailed a taxi. After picking up Alyssa, we hurried to the hospital where her grandmother had been taken. In the taxi, Alyssa, who seemed to have been holding back, started to break down and shed tears. She was so lively before. "It's not going to be our last goodbye today, is it? I'm scared. What do we do?" Alyssa's hands, resting on her lap, clenched tightly. I placed my hand over Alyssa's, trying to reassure her. "Everything will be all right. Plus, I'm here with you. You're not alone. It'll be okay." Throughout our drive to the hospital, I kept speaking comforting words to Alyssa. Once we arrived at the hospital, we couldn't see the grandmother right away. Throughout the day, the grandmother's condition didn't improve, and our days were filled with anxiety. During that time, I stayed close to Alyssa as much as possible. "Hey, Jake, I'm sorry for keeping you with me all the time. You must be tired, right? I think I can manage on my own now." Alyssa's face betrayed her attempt to be brave, showing her underlying fear. To begin with, I was happy that Alyssa rallied on me when her grandmother was taken to the hospital. If being by her side could ease Alyssa's worries even a little, I wanted to be there for her. "It's okay. I'm concerned about your grandmother and about you. I want to be here." With those words, I stayed by Alyssa's side. 3 days after the hospitalization, the grandmother's condition finally stabilized, and we were allowed to visit. Right after the visit, the grandmother looked frail, which made me anxious. However, as the days passed, she began to recover, and by the end of 2 weeks, she had regained her cheerful smile. The doctor told us that the worst was over, and the likelihood of her condition worsening abruptly was low. One day, during our visit, the grandmother looked at Alyssa and me, and gave us a mischievous smile. Then she said, "You too. Things are going well, huh?" At that, both Alyssa and I blushed. In fact, since Alyssa's grandmother was hospitalized, I realized I wanted to be there for Alyssa, to support and protect her. So after hearing from the doctor that her grandmother's condition had stabilized, I confessed my feelings to Alyssa. It turned out Alyssa felt the same way about me, and we had just started dating a few days ago. It seems there's no keeping secrets from the old lady. Haha, you two make a lovely pair. Instead of just being a boyfriend, I'd love for you to be my grandson-in-law soon. Besides, if you're Terry's grandson, I'm sure you'd make Alyssa happy. Hearing that, I was taken aback. I remembered the sound of the name Terry. A few of my grandmother Theris's friends had referred to her as Terry during her funeral. Alyssa seemed just as surprised. Who's Terry? Jake's grandmother. Wait, do you know Jake's grandmother? Alyssa's grandmother nodded emphatically. Of course I do. As the story went, my grandmother Theresa and Alyssa's grandmother had been childhood friends. Both were born and raised in the same small town in Nebraska and later married there. Even in their golden years, they frequently met up for coffee and chats. Alyssa's grandmother often heard stories from my grandmother about her adorable grandson. Embarrassingly, my grandmother would tell Alyssa's grandmother things like, "My grandson wouldn't hurt a fly, and he sends me flowers on my birthday. Isn't he sweet?" Hearing those stories, I remembered my beloved grandmother Theris's gentle smile. Unfortunately, during my grandmother's funeral, Alyssa's grandmother had been unwell. So she had never met me. We used to joke that it would be nice if our grandchildren got married someday. It's like a dream come true for me and Terry. Thanks to you too, she chuckled. We exchanged a glance and shared a laugh. Neither of us had known that our grandmothers were childhood friends, but we both realized that we had been recipients of their love, which warmed our hearts. Some time later, Alyssa's grandmother passed away. It was a sad time, but in her last moments, she wore a contented smile, surrounded by her family. I felt blessed to have been accepted as part of the family to bid her farewell. I then started working full-time at Alyssa's father's resort, having started out as a part-timer. Being seen as a potential future son-in-law, I've been put through the ringer every day. Watching me push myself to the limit, Alyssa always greets me with a bright smile. You used to just coast through when you were part-timing, remember? Now, your expression is completely different. It makes me so happy thinking you're doing all this for our future together. Hearing her say that, I feel like she's become even more radiant lately. That's another reason I'm so driven in my job. I want to become a man worthy of standing by her side. Once I feel I've truly come into my own, I plan to propose to Alyssa and get married. When that day comes, Alyssa and I intend to visit the graves of our grandmothers and give them our heartfelt update. I'm sure both of them would be overjoyed about our marriage. So, how did you find today's story? Your subscription and a thumbs up would be a great encouragement for our content creation. We're looking forward to your comments as well. See you in the next video.